from the land down under,
Yes.
and she is going to share with us some insight about the graphic design industry and just her wealth of knowledge and anything else our audience can find valuable and useful, and anything you and I find entertaining.
Yeah, well, there's lots.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank
So
you.
tell us a little bit about you.
Hopefully you can all understand me. I will try and speak slowly because I do speak very fast, and it may not help with my Australian accent, so I'll try and slow it down a little bit. So a bit about me. So I've been a graphic designer. That's all I've done in my whole life. I started when I was, I don't know, I started working back when I was about 20, so I'm 50 something, so over 30 years. I always say that the way that I got into the industry is not the way that I think anybody would be able to get into the industry anymore. I mean, in my day, it was because I could use a computer almost, and because I was also very creative. So, I was a fast learner even in those days when the old little Macs SEs were around, and that's what I was doing some word processing on, which is ridiculous. And I was using Pagemaker, so that would have been I think it's about 1987. And I sort of fell into what I did. I'd been traveling, I came back, and somebody at a very big corporate said, "Oh, we need a graphic designer." And I said, "Yeah, well, I could do that. I could do that." And it's ridiculous, like ridiculous. But I was a very fast learner in terms of software, and I did have the creative skills, and more than anything else, I had some amazing mentors. My first corporate life, and I was a very big corporate, big department store here in Australia, and they knew that I couldn't do much, but they took me on, and I had a couple of people in that team who really took me under their wing, and they taught me so much, and I'm forever grateful for that. And I think that's probably why I am the way I am these days, that I like to impart my knowledge onto those who are seeking. And I think it's really important. Like, why not? Like, that's what I want to give that back. So that's sort of the way I sort of started. So I had 10 years of corporate life in in-house graphics departments, small, sort of, 8, there were probably about 8 people in the department, sometimes less. And I loved it. It was, I loved it. We were very frantically busy. I worked for a big oil company as well, my second sort of corporate life. And again, that was just wonderful. It was fantastic. After I had child number 2, it became a bit difficult for me to sort of in and out of the office. I was working from home, which again was pretty progressive in the 1999.
Yeah, that was progressive.
Yeah, it was progressive, and I had to really convince them that I could do it, that I was going to be able to do it. And again, you can think about what internet was like then. It was not the way it is today.
Yeah.
And so file sharing, I don't even think I was able to share my files. I was putting them onto floppy disks or something, getting CDs burnt. I think that's what I was doing. And that was, of course, difficult as well. And then I was, having to physically drive them in. They weren't so far from me. The office was about 15 minutes, but I would drive stuff into them, and I would pick up physical work. And so that life obviously has changed. But that was great. So I started working for them. That sort of fell apart mutually after probably about 2 years of working for them at home after my second child. And then I've been freelancing ever since. So that's sort of my work life. And yeah.
Okay. So for those of you who were listening, Lisa mentioned Pagemaker, and that is equivalent to InDesign today.
Very much so.
Very much so. I remember Pagemaker, and then we kind of transitioned to Quark Express.
And I refused. I don't know what I did. I don't know how I'm thinking if there was a transition between Pagemaker and InDesign, but there was definitely that lag in between of Quark, and it could have been, it was a good couple of years. I don't know how I don't know what, I think what was it? Pagemaker must have still been around. I'm not sure.
I think Pagemaker went into transition to CorelDRAW or rebranded as CorelDRAW.
Do that, I don't know. I think when I had to, I was doing Quark. I really hated it. I didn't like it at all. Yeah. And for those who ever did use it. I didn't like it. And I was really happy, actually, to be honest, when Quark left and I could see people were struggling to work to pick up InDesign. For me, it was so easy. They were pretty similar, you know. InDesign, any Adobe products, were, you know, they took PageMaker and they just went, and it was amazing. I used to use freehand. I don't know, did you ever use Macromedia?
I did.
Yes, so I use PageMaker and freehand, and so again, going from freehand to Illustrator was pretty easy as well.
It seemed as if Adobe studied those products ahead of time before launching theirs. So I don't know if you found this to be true, but what took 3 clicks to do a task or do a function in the predecessor, it only took 1 click in any of the Adobe products.
It was magic. I almost remember just going, this is amazing. Like this is, you know, PageMaker on steroids. It was amazing, and I still love it. I love using InDesign. I'm a big InDesign user more than anything else.
So I want to ask you something. My first question I want to ask you is, think back to your 25-year-old Lisa.
Yep.
Okay. What advice would you give her today in regards to this career path, the industry, or anything to help catapult her into the next level?
Oh, there's so many. One is being super organized. I am a very super organized person, so I know that that's not necessarily easy for everyone, but being super organized, certainly up here, and then once you've got it up here, maybe write it down, so I guess so you can translate that to a client. I think as well, what I've probably learned along the way is that you need to get your client organized. Now, of course, that's not easy because your client may not know what they want, and that's totally okay. Like that's okay. That's why they've come to you, and they haven't tried to do it in Microsoft Word, you know, for example. And so I think that would probably be my advice, is to work out a system, and I do know a system. I've worked in those 25 years, I've got a great system of being able to help your client give you the information that you need so that you can then therefore start. I think that's probably the big thing. The second thing is being, over the years, I've got, you know, I guess stricter with my guidelines, not with my guidelines, but my parameters about what I can do. What I can do, and in the time I can do that. Don't necessarily say yes to something that you can't do in the time, and be on time, saying that as well. Be on time, you know, be on time.
So I found in my brand coaching program, I've advised students of that system that you speak of in helping your client, because I find that the clients really want us to lead them by the hand through the process. So when we have those processes in place, we're really telling our brand story to say, hey, you've chosen the right vendor to help you with this. And if you have those systems in place to walk them step by step through the process, they tend to feel like they're in good hands.
Excellent.
And so when they feel like they're in good hands, your perceived value, your brand's value skyrockets.
Excellent.
And so they get to a place where calling you is second nature.
Yes, absolutely.
Because they don't want to entrust anyone else, because they know with you, they're taken care of. And that's because you have it all mapped out. You have the process mapped out.
I agree with that, except that there are also those clients who start off that way, but then they think they know best. And sometimes they do, you know, just because I like pink doesn't mean that they're going to like pink, you know, or they like brown, which I really don't want to have brown artwork everywhere. It's not very lively. So, or whatever the colour is, if it's dark, you know, let's say. But so that changes. So I think that works in some ways, but not in other ways. I think that they trust that process and they trust in me, but you still have to listen, I think, as a designer, to what they maybe are saying along the way as well. You know, they may be they may be older, and or their clients or their target audience is much older or younger even, you know, and so I have to try and listen to that as well. And so I'm not always right. I think that's always the thing. I'm not always right.
Right. I agree. I do agree.
Mostly right.
And I found success in those areas where they're not making the best decision. It's not that they have to choose the suggestion
Yeah,
that I
absolutely.
outweigh, but according to, you know, design principles and things like that, they're not making the best decision. So I find that I get greater success when I tie it to their wallet
Yes.
by saying, you know, you could probably make 15% more revenue by choosing the
Yes.
difference between brown and
Yeah,
yellow.
absolutely.
So going into color theory and things like that. And like you said, it doesn't work all the time, but I found that it increases the chances because they can relate to dollars and cents more so
Yes,
than an aesthetic, you
I
know,
think so.
type of
I
thing.
think I think that that's accurate, very accurate.
So I want to ask you this. We journeyed into the software world. So technology, are you a Mac user or are
So
you?
really, again, I think of my career and a long career, I've used both. So um, I started with Mac, and my corporate life was all Mac. And then when I went on my own, I couldn't afford to buy Macs. Macs in those days were outrageous. Like they were, certainly in Australia, we get a really bad deal in Australia. Everything's cost us a lot more. But literally for me to set up a system where I had software, of course, was awesome. It still is expensive, but software where you physically had to purchase it. And then, of course, you know, 3 years later, you're thinking I'm out of date again. But to buy a Mac was too much. It would have cost me about 10,000 Australian, so maybe 6 or 7 US to set
Oh,
myself up at least at home. So I went to PC, I used PC, and the reality, I was pretty happy. Oh, it really was. And I still say that these days, that really all the software is pretty multi-platform. Unless I'm really wrong, I feel like at the moment you could use either. You know, I'm back to Mac. I went back to Mac about 4 years ago. You know, big, beautiful screen. It's big. It's big. And I love it. And it's more affordable these days.
yeah.
And I love it. And I'm happy back in the Mac land. But you can absolutely use PC. If you can't afford it and that's what you can do, then that's amazing. Do that. But
Okay.
try and get a bigger screen.
Yeah. So you can see.
I think that's big advice, actually, to use just a little, you know, laptop is going to be pretty hard for you. It is
Yes.
going to be hard. Get a monitor if you have to.
Yeah, it's murder on the eyes.
It is.
Um, I wanted to ask you about your niche. Is there any specific area of design
Yeah.
that you really
So
focus on?
I'll answer that in two folds, because one, you asked me about my career, and I think that certainly maybe when you're young, you may know exactly what you want to do, but you may not. So I think in those early days, and I still hold this today, is that do the small stuff, because why not? Like, do the small stuff. You're going to learn things along the way with software or people, you know, learning things along the way. So do name tags. I used to do a lot of name tags and labels. I still sometimes do the tiniest little things that I think, oh my goodness, really? But actually, why not? Like, why not? I'm still in my beautiful computer. I still love it. So why not? But of course, yes, I have carved a bit of a way. I do a lot of books behind me. There's a lot of books.
Okay. Okay.
And there I do a lot of big books, big memoirs for people. I've done cookbooks and family histories and corporate books and art books. I do a lot of books, and I love doing them. So they are really big projects, you know, with at least 200 photos, sometimes a ridiculous amount more I'm given. And, you know, 200-page books. I do a lot of books, and I love doing them. I love seeing that end product when something's printed and it's just beautifully bound,
Yeah.
and they've got it. Yeah,
There's
so that's probably
nothing
my
like holding it in your hand once you're,
yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing, and I love it. And a lot of the clients that I've had have been beautiful budgets. So they've been big, beautiful books with, you know, beautiful clamshell boxes. If you know what they are, there's boxes to put them inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so I do a lot of those. It's probably niche. After that, probably a lot of logo designs as well. But just say yes to things and carve your way, and I don't know, don't say no to things.
Yeah, yeah. So I can almost imagine how much of a rock star you are at doing books, since you're a very organized person. And it takes a lot of order to do that, because you got paragraph style sheets, character style sheets, um, just the whole formatting piece of it. You have to be a very disciplined person to do that. And that's a gift to be able to do that and have that, be able to provide that service.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. I really enjoy it. It's
So books give you warm fuzzies. Is there anything else along your career path that you would say gave you that similar joy?
Yeah, so I've done also a lot of the work I've done, probably when my kids are a bit younger, but a lot of invitations. So I've done invitations galore, galore. I'm Jewish, so I had, we had a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs. So there were always a lot of kids around that I was doing for. So I've done ridiculous, untold amounts. I've got boxfuls. And I guess the good thing about that as well, number one, I'll go back a little bit as well, is that I really understand the printing sphere. And I think that that's a really important thing for a graphic designer. And I've seen young people come along, they don't understand. They know how to make things look pretty, but they don't understand they almost don't understand what CMYK is. They don't know they can ditch something off to a printer with some crop marks because my software's told me to. Do they really understand the printing process? I'm not sure. I've been to the printer before with digital presses,
Right.
the old-fashioned ones. Not old-fashioned, but, the offset printing. And I understand printing process. It's incredibly important. But I'll go back one step about the invitations, is saying that I have done so many on different formats. So I've done shiny ones, some on mirrors, some on wood, some around. So I've learned different die cuts, and I've had to deal with different printers. I've done screen printing ones, plasticky things. I almost can't think of something I haven't, some surface that I haven't had to print onto, embellishments, raised printing, embossing, debossing.
Yes.
Um, and so I think that part of invitations has taught me a lot about all those different finishes, and therefore if I need to do something else in another format, I'm doing a brochure is going to print today, which has got a spot varnish, but the new digital machines that can do it, it's not quite as good, but they can do like a spot varnish. But so that has taught me that sort of thing, I think, along the way. So yeah, so invitations a lot of. I do also some fun things for people, like you can't see behind me, but for people's birthdays or celebrations, so a little bit of creative side. So somebody will come to me, they want something for their wall, some creative stuff for their wall, for a family member. I do a lot of that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, so I want to go back to what you mentioned about the print production process, because I've served as art director over teams of graphic designers. And I do find that those who have graduated from school recently, they do know how to make beautiful things, but they don't know how to make they don't know how to produce them, to set them
Absolutely.
up to be produced. And I found that those who worked with me on the team as graphic designers, they were so grateful to me for showing them and teaching them this, because they said they don't teach this in school.
Isn't that
And
crazy?
I I was like, what? How do
Well,
you, yeah,
it's the
everything's
reason.
not going to be on the internet.
Well, I think the reason for that is twofold. Yeah, one is obviously there's a lot of content that people doing these days that are just for either socials or digital, some sort of digital end, you know. And less gets printed these days, of course. And even when it does get printed, it's being printed on some sort of fancy digital press, which is it is great. That's beautiful. They can do amazing jobs, but it's really, really important to be able to know how to set your artwork up correctly, and to really do understand yeah, to understand those printing processes. I think I understand colour, you know, I was taught colour,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I, and I, and I think it's really important. So yeah, I agree that they do not teach that. They teach them how to use the software, and
Yeah.
that's what they teach them to do, is software. And I don't know that much else, you know, which is good. You know, you need to learn how to use software. You need to have the ability to be able to put things together, but you do need to know, understand printing processes. It's incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. And I've also realized that in my projects that I've had, where it's supposed to be a purely digital product,
Mm.
the client ends up saying, well, we're going to want to print this too, just a couple of copies or maybe a quarter of the actual um, attendance. They want to print a quarter of the attendance amount. So, like a
Yeah.
fourth of the people will opt for printed versions. And it's a question that I've learned to ask ahead of time now,
Absolutely.
because the scope of work and the quote for that scope of work does not include setting it up for printing.
No, absolutely. I always say, like, you know, somebody, that's a good point. I mean, there's a few points in that, but one is, of course, you know, somebody thinks that they've sent me the artwork today, or they've signed off yesterday, let's say. This is a perfect example that it's going to be the printers this morning, and it's just not. You know, it's just not. You know, it's mostly ready because, again, part of what my process is when I'm working is that I know that in the end I don't want to spend a whole day getting it to print ready. You know, it should be only, you know, a small amount of time, because I have set, that's a really important point about setting your artwork up in a particular way, so that when you do get to the point when you want to get it to print, you know, it's mostly done, and you've just got to fix your bleeds and you've got to fix up your colours and stuff. So, but certainly as well, another point that you were saying as well, if people are going to print, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, someone said, oh yeah, you know, we want to get 300 printed, and you give them a price for the, I know I always get a printing price and a design price.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come back in the end and they say, we only want 50. And then they give them a price for 50 and they say, whoa, what the heck? And you say, yeah, because there are set up prices or set up
Right.
costs for the printer, whether you do 50, as I said, I try and talk per unit, but, and then I'll think my design cost is going to be different if they're doing 50 or they're
Right.
doing 300. And I say, if you're printing one or you're printing 1,000, my design cost is the same. It's the same.
I found that I get greater success when I stopped um, using line item pricing. I just
Oh,
wrote,
absolutely.
and so
Absolutely.
this is what you want. This is the end result of what you want, and this is the price for that.
Absolutely. As I said, whether it's one or it's digital or
Right.
it's 5,000 units, it's the same amount of work for me.
Right.
And you cannot do per unit, not at all. Or I put that in my quotes in the beginning, that any change to the printing, if they're printing, um, the cost per unit will be more expensive if they're printing less. And I try and explain that to them. It's the
Yeah.
same amount of work. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So we touched on a couple of challenges. Are there any more recent ones that you want to share with us? Examples of challenges you've had working with clients and how you set out to overcome them, just to give some type of advice to other designers?
Yeah, I think, well, I think, as I said, firstly, and again, it takes time, it takes experience to learn where you've mucked up. It's a bit like terms of conditions, and then you realise you left out point 4 and 5, you know, and it doesn't matter. Next time it won't be 4 and 5, you know, they will be added in, or that all your terms will be tightened up. Now, of course, you've got to remember as well, people aren't going to read pages of terms and conditions, but I do like to explain things. I've got some good notes for people to understand, I guess, that process. But of course, things don't always go according to plan. And I think that you've just got to be clear when things, I guess, come up. You've got to obviously explain to them why maybe it's gone off the rails a little bit, or what's gone wrong. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think what's, again, I think where things go wrong is where people probably start adding in more, or they keep changing. They give you all the text and they keep changing the text, and then you can't fit it all in, and then they get upset that you can't get it all to work, or you've got to spend 3 more hours on something that you had looking really, really, really wonderful. So they would probably be where problems start coming in. But I think just keeping your client in the loop the whole way along is really, really, really important. Stick to your deadlines. If I say Monday, 11 o'clock, I mean that I'm going to have the artwork to you Monday, 11 o'clock. For me, it's likely to be that night before it'll be ready, or not Monday. It'll always be ready before. I don't necessarily give it to them. But I think it's just about keeping your client in the loop with things. But yeah, things do go off the rails. I'm trying to think how I actually fix it, or have a situation. I've got one going at the moment where it was probably my fault. I think it was my fault. I got railroaded into doing something I didn't really want to do. It shouldn't be done in a particular way. They should have done they've got a whole lot of combination images. They want to do one image in the end with 57 products in that. They should have done a photo shoot. They should have done that. We call it a hamper. It's not really, but and I said in the beginning, look, I don't think this is for me. You need to get a photographer in to get those 57 products and set it up. But they didn't do that. And now they want me to cut it all into just one little image, and they've got 57 products. And I just shouldn't have said yes. And I did say yes because I thought I was going to be able to do it. And had a very stressful day yesterday because I don't like to disappoint. But also this client is quite difficult. They give me some amazing work, and the amazing work that I can do, I do really, really well, and it's an amazing process. But I shouldn't have said yes. And I learned from that. I shouldn't have said yes that I could do that, because I'm struggling now to get those 57 images into one image and make it look like a beautiful box. So I've got to tackle that today. I do have to tackle that today, and it might be disappointing them, but I will give them options. I think that's the thing. Give them some options if you're going to disappoint them.
Oh yeah, that is good advice.
A, B, and C, and clear them out. When a really important thing too is if you're emailing something, don't give them a whole paragraph. They're only going to answer 2 things. Be really clear. A, blah, 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 blah. B, and C, and they will answer A, B, and C. Don't do it in a paragraph form. It's really important when you're asking something of a client to do that.
Yeah, bullets, numbered lists.
Absolutely, and
nothing more than 3. So you've got to figure
no
out.
more than 3, and don't make them long paragraphs. I mean, I tend to overtalk, so but don't overtype that. Don't overtype.
Right, exactly. So if someone wanted to contact you to get their book laid out or manuscript or something like that, how could they contact you?
Best way. So I'm a bit naughty in my socials. I had all grand ideas of keeping all that up, and I don't. I don't know. It's really bad, but my website is pretty good. My website's got everything you need. It's got lots of samples of my portfolio. So find me at lisalipschattdesigns.com.au.
Okay.
If you just Google Lisa Lipschatt, and who could not forget that name? Seriously, what did I marry? If you just Google me, you'll find me, and then you'll find how to find me in that. My mobile number, my cell number, and my email addresses, etc.
Okay. So it's been great talking to you.
Yeah.
I just want to allow you anything else you want to share with the audience, because this has been a very warm and joyous conversation with you, and I really appreciate you coming on the Graphic Designers Hub show and sharing all your wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah, no, I think really enjoy doing what you do. If you're not enjoying being a graphic designer, then don't sit there and hate it every day. I think that's like that for every job you're doing, to be honest. I think, and obviously try and work that out before you're 30 and you've got children, because it's a bit hard to change then. But just enjoy what you're doing. Be kind. Impart your knowledge. It's incredibly important to me to impart your knowledge. I'm a very big foodie. I want to give you my recipes, and I want to give you every bit on that recipe. I do not want to give you, most of the recipe. and secretive. It just doesn't work for me. I like to share what I know, and I like to be around people who are also like that. And I go to those people and ask, I think that's the thing too. Don't be afraid to ask, ask others if you need some assistance, and don't be afraid to say you don't know how, because you won't learn if you don't ask, but impart your knowledge.
Yes, I agree. Share the wealth, share the wealth of
Yeah,
the wisdom.
share.
I'm going to email you about recipes because
Yes, please. I
I
made
don't cook well.
I do, and I'm one of these. You did say that I cook very well, and I am one of these ISO sourdough bakers. I have to admit that I am one of those. So my oven's been on for a while. It's ready for me to go and bake some beautiful sourdough bread. So if anybody else wants to know about that, you can find me as well on Facebook or wherever, and I will tell you everything I know.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you so much
Really
for
enjoyed
being
that,
on
and
the
lovely. As you said, it's really lovely to to see people around the world. We're in a pretty hard time
Yeah.
everywhere, and it's really, really lovely to show that the world can be connected, and that's a good thing. The annoying thing about Zoom sometimes and all this sort of stuff, but there's some really lovely things about it as well. So it's lovely. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.
Have a lovely day. I've got sunshine today, so I'm very happy. We have spring and it's on its way.
All right. Okay. Well, catch up with Lisa in the group because she's also in the Graphic Designers Hub group, and engage in conversation with her there. I know I will. You'll see my recipe comments there as well. All
Have
right.
a lovely day, everybody.
Okay. Bye bye.